Jake Porter sat on the porch of his cabin, which was made of wood, and watched the two suns of Kepler 442F go down behind the horizon. The purple leaves on the alien trees moved in the evening breeze, making a sound that sounded a lot like rain. He took a sip of his coffee and let out a long breath. This was just what he needed. Be quiet, being alone, being at peace. It had been 8 months since he quit the Colonial Defense Force. He had been away from the uniforms, the orders, and the never-ending cycle of violence that had taken up 15 years of his life for 8 months. The colony wars had eaten up good people and spit them out as empty shells. Jake had seen too many friends die, too many civilians caught in the crossfire, and too many politicians make decisions that cost soldiers their lives. So he did something that everyone else thought was crazy. He used his military pension to buy a kit for a prefab cabin and claimed a piece of land that was 300 kilometers away from the nearest town. No one lives nearby. No communication relays. There was no connection to the colonial networks that were full of news about treaties, fights, and political posturing. The only sounds out here were the wind, animals, and his own thoughts. The cabin was simple but strong. Jake had spent the first 2 months putting it together and setting up his systems. The roof had solar panels that made power. A water recycler took moisture out of the air. He had made a hydroponic garden in the cleared area behind the cabin, where he grew beans, potatoes, tomatoes, and lettuce. It wasn't fancy, but it was good enough. More than enough. His days were nice and routine. Get up at dawn. Look at the garden. He read from a stack of old paperback books he had brought with him from Earth. He would sometimes hike through the woods and be amazed by the strange ecosystem of Kepler 442F. The bark on the trees here felt like smooth stone, and at night, little flying things glowed. Everything was strange, but it was also familiar enough to make him feel at ease. Jake had never been a big talker before. Some of his old teammates used to tease him that he could go days without saying more than 10 words. That was just fine with him out here. He sometimes talked to himself like a cooking show host to hear a human voice. But most of the time, he liked the quiet. In the first few weeks, the colonial government had tried to get in touch with him a few times. Colonel Hayes, his old boss, had sent him messages asking him to think about it again. We need soldiers with experience like you, Porter. The cross situation is still not stable. Jake had deleted them without answering. He had served in the military for long enough. They would have to get by without him. But tonight felt different. Jake couldn't quite put his finger on it. The air felt heavier, like it was full of something he couldn't put his finger on. During the war, he learned to trust his gut. That little voice in his head had saved his life more times than he could count. That voice was telling him that something wasn't right now. He drank his coffee and went inside. The inside of the cabin was simple but useful. There was a bed in one corner, a small kitchen area, a table with his books stacked neatly, and a storage locker with his old military gear in it. He promised himself he wouldn't touch that locker again, but he still couldn't get rid of it. Old ways. Jake checked his perimeter sensors before going to bed, which was something he did every night. The system was simple. It was just a grid of motion detectors and seismic monitors around the property. If anything bigger than a deer came within 100 meters, they would let him know. All the lights were green. Normal results. He nodded to himself and got into bed. At 3 a.m, loud alarms woke him up. Jake jumped out of bed right away, his military training kicking in before he had time to think about what was going on. He hit the alarm panel to turn off the sound and opened the sensor display on his tablet. His heart rate went up as he read the information. Earthquake activity. A lot of seismic activity. Something was moving below ground, and the readings were all wrong. The sensors showed a contact about 20 meters below the surface, moving through solid bedrock. There was nothing on Kepler 442F that could tunnel through rock like that. The animals in the area stayed on the ground or in the trees. Jake put on his pants and boots, his mind racing. Is it possible that it is a geological event? A cave in the ground falling apart? But no, the movement was too planned and too directed. Whatever was down there was alive and coming right for his cabin. He took a flashlight and went to the basement door. There was a small underground storage space in the cabin where he kept tools and supplies that needed to stay cool. Jake opened the hatch and climbed down the ladder, shining his flashlight on the concrete floor. Everything looked fine. Shelves full of canned food, water bottles, and extra batteries for his solar system. He put his hand on the floor. Nothing. The sensors might not have been working right. Then he felt it. A vibration that was weak at first, but got stronger. The concrete under his hand shook. The ceiling started to drop dust. Jake backed up toward the ladder, his heart racing. The shaking turned into a rumble. The floor broke with a sound like thunder, and a jagged line ran from wall to wall across the concrete. As the rumbling got louder, Jake climbed up the ladder. He got to the main floor and turned around just as a loud crash came from below. Something had gotten through. Jake's hands moved without thinking. He yanked open his storage locker and took out his old pulse rifle, which was the only piece of military gear he had kept charged and ready. His fingers found a power switch in the dark, thanks to muscle memory from 1,000 drills. The weapon came to life with a hum, and its targeting display lit up his face with a pale blue light. The noise from below had stopped. Now there was only silence, thick and heavy. Jake crept toward the basement door with his rifle raised, and every nerve in his body screamed danger. Right under his feet was whatever had just broken through solid rock and concrete. He heard something moving, something big moving around in the dark below. Then he heard a sound that made his blood run cold, breathing that was wet and hard, not the mechanical wheeze of machines, but the desperate gasp of something alive and hurt badly. "Come on, Porter," he said to himself. "Just look. That's it. Just look and think." Jake went to the hatch and looked down into the basement. His flashlight cut through clouds of concrete dust and lit up a scene that didn't make sense. His well-organized storage space was ruined. The shelves had been broken. Things were all over the place. And right in the middle of it all, lying on the broken floor, was something that shouldn't be on this planet. A warrior from the Croft. Jake's finger got tighter on the trigger. His body screamed at him to shoot with every instinct it had. During the colony wars, the Croft were a nightmare for humans. 8 feet of armored killing machine made for close combat and brutal efficiency. He had seen what they could do to a group of soldiers. He had lost friends because of their raids. The peace treaty that was signed 2 years ago was supposed to put an end to all of that, but it was hard to trust after so much violence. He could tell this one was a woman by the way the ridges on her skull were shaped. She lay on her side, with 4 arms wrapped around something she was holding to her chest. Her natural armor plating, which was usually a deep bronze color, was cracked and leaking purple blood. One of her secondary arms was hanging at an odd angle, which was clearly broken. She wasn't going to attack. She wasn't even trying to get up. She was lying there, breathing in those awful, rattling breaths. Jake slowly climbed down the ladder, keeping his rifle aimed at the center mass. His training told him to stay away, keep the tactical edge, and be ready for anything. People knew that the Croft would pretend to be weak before they attacked, but when he got closer, he could tell it wasn't a trick. She was going to die. Her copper-colored eyes followed him as he got closer. That look showed that she was smart and sharp, even though she must have been in a lot of pain. Jake had looked into Croft's eyes before, usually through the sights of a gun. They had always been angry, determined, and full of the fire of warriors who would never give up. Something was different about this one's eyes. Fear, not for herself, but for something more. Something Jake remembered from his own life. The Croft's mouth moved. Her kind had 4 mandibles that made a clicking and clattering sound when they spoke their own language. But what came out was English that was broken and had a strong accent. "Please." The word was barely a whisper. "They hunt my kids." Jake's rifle went down a little. He had thought a lot of things, but not that. He saw what she'd been holding so tightly when she moved. A data device, a common piece of colonial technology, with a cracked screen that still glows faintly. She held it with her good hand, the one that wasn't broken, so tightly that her knuckles turned white under her scales. She managed to say, "Need help?" Another cough that was wet, more purple blood, came out of the cracks in her chest armor. "Please. Please, human." Jake's thoughts raced. This had to be a trick, an ambush of some kind. There might have been more Croft outside, waiting for him to let his guard down. but his sensors didn't pick up anything else. The amount of blood pooling around her, the way her breathing was getting shallower, and the way her limbs were shaking all pointed to one thing. At least she was telling the truth about dying. "Who's after your kids?" Jake asked, still holding a rifle up, but moving his finger off the trigger. "Mine," she said. She pushed through the pain and focused on her English, which was getting clearer. "Rogue group. Broke the deal. Took my kids. Hostages." She coughed again, and it sounded awful. "Made me watch people. Look for settlements. I said no. Stole proof. Ran." Jake's tactical mind figured this out. If she was telling the truth, there was more than one hurt alien in his basement. A rogue group of Croft made the peace treaty less likely to work. If they were going to attack human settlements, the war would start up again. Thousands of people in Croft would die. "Why are you here?" he asked. "Why my cabin?" Sensors didn't pick up any signals. Thoughtless. It's safe to hide. She closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them again with a lot of effort. "They follow. Come soon. Please kill me. Take the data. If you're here, I'll kill you too." Great. Just right. Jake had come out here to get away from the war, but it had literally dug a hole in his basement. He should call it in. Get in touch with the colonial government. Let them deal with this mess. But his communication array was down, and it had been for months. It would take hours to fix it, and from the sound of it, he didn't have that much time. He should just go, get his things together, and go into the woods. The Cross should handle their own issues. He had worked hard for his retirement. He didn't have to fight anymore. But then he looked at her again. Looked closely. Through the armor, the alien features, and the years of propaganda that had made her people look like monsters. He thought the data device she was protecting was more valuable than her own life. He could see how desperate she was when she said, "My children." Jake had seen that face before. In camps for refugees. In cities that had been bombed. In the mirror after some missions that High Command had promised him were necessary. He had been fighting for 15 years. Killing when told to. Following rules of engagement that sometimes felt more like rules for killing people in an organized way. He had told himself it was his duty, his honor, and his duty to protect people. And it might have been, but it had also left him feeling empty inside, in ways that 6 months of peace hadn't been able to fill. There was a mother trying to save her kids. This person had put everything on the line to stop more war. This choice had nothing to do with orders, politics, or loyalty to a species. Just right and wrong. "Damn it," Jake said. He put his rifle down and put it over his back. "This is the dumbest thing I've ever done." He went back up the ladder and got his old first aid kit from the storage room. It was made for human bodies, but he had learned how to treat Croft injuries in combat. You should know your enemy and all that. The basics were pretty much the same. Stop the bleeding. Keep the infection from spreading, and make sure the person is stable enough to be moved. The Croft warrior was watching him with what looked like surprise when he came back down. He knelt next to her and opened the kit. "I'm Jake," he said, "and you're going to tell me everything. But first, let's make sure you don't die in my basement." He knew that when her mandibles clicked softly, it meant she understood. "Rent," she said. "My name is Rent." "Okay, Rent. This is probably going to hurt." Jake worked quickly, and his hand stayed steady even though the situation was strange. The medic kit had foam sealant in it that was meant to close wounds and help them clot. He had used it on soldiers many times before. The biology of Croft was different, but the idea was the same. Stop the bleeding first, then worry about the rest. He shook the canister and said, "This is going to hurt." Renta's mandibles clicked, which he thought meant he understood. He sprayed the foam into the biggest hole in her chest armor. She hissed and her body went stiff, but she didn't pull away. The foam grew bigger and changed color from white to purple as it mixed with her blood. Then it hardened into a rubbery seal. "Tell me about this rogue group," Jake said as he moved on to the next cut. "Talk to her. Keep her awake. Basic first aid for combat." Renta's breathing was still hard, but it was getting better. Called themselves the Renewal. Think that peace makes us weak. Want to get back to warrior traditions. She stopped for a moment to gather her strength. 3 months ago, They took over the garrison on the homeworld of Croft. Peace Council was killed. Your government doesn't know yet. Jake's hand stopped. Why hasn't anyone told anyone about this? They are in charge of communications. Tell your diplomats that everything is fine. In the meantime, they are getting weapons. Plan attacks. Her copper-colored eyes were on him. My friend was on the Peace Council. They put him to death. They took our 3 younglings and told me I could either spy on them or watch my kids die slowly. Jake's chest felt like it was twisting. He had seen hostage situations before. They never turned out well. How did you get the proof? Was, and still am a communications officer. Could get into military networks. Got all of their battle plans. Plans for attacks. Lists of targets. She weakly pointed at the data device and said, everything, 15 human settlements are on the list to be destroyed. If this happens, thousands of your people will die. Jake closed the last big wound and sat back on his heels. The foam had stopped most of the bleeding, but she had already lost a lot of blood. She would need proper medical care for her broken arm eventually, but at least she wasn't to die in the next 10 minutes. Why are you running here? Why not go to the police? Rent made a noise that could have been a laugh. Tunneled 300 kilometers below the surface. I thought they wouldn't find me for a while longer. Planned to get to a human settlement and give up with data, but the injuries were worse than they thought. I saw that your cabin had no signals. Thought left behind. Great place to relax before the last push. And instead, you broke through my floor. Yes, sorry for the damage to your property. That made Jake almost smile. This was an alien warrior who was dying in his basement and saying he was sorry for breaking his floor. It was all so ridiculous that it was hard to take. How long until they get here? He asked. Renta's face darkened. Hunters follow biosignatures. My blood leaves a trail underground. They go through tunnel systems quickly. For hours, maybe. Maybe less. Jake looked at the time. It was a little after 4 in the morning. 2 hours until sunrise. He climbed the ladder and got his tablet, which showed him maps of the area. He thought that if he read this correctly, there were natural cave systems all over this area. That's how she had gotten so far in the tunnel. And that's how her pursuers would get there. He went back down and saw Rent trying to get up. She got about halfway there before falling back down with a grunt of pain. Jake told him to stay down. You're not fit to fight. Must go. Have to run. Helping me will get you killed. Yes, most likely. Jake took out his tactical scanner to look for any contacts that were getting closer. Not yet. How many hunters? Standard unit for pursuit. 6 fighters. All trained for elite combat. They won't talk about it. Will not show mercy. Renta's eyes were boring into him. You should go. This isn't your fight. That made Jake think. She was correct. It was smart to grab his emergency pack and run away into the woods. The Crofts should clean up their own mess. He had done a good thing by fixing her up. That was all anyone could ask for. But then he remembered the 15 settlements that were going to be attacked. Families go about their daily lives, not knowing that war was coming. Kids are playing in the streets. People are trying to make something new on this strange planet. And this data device, the only thing that could stop it, was in his basement. He asked, how good are these hunters? The best of our army. Since they were kids, they have been trained. Strong, fast, and deadly. Ren stopped. Why? Jake took his rifle and went to the ladder. Because I'm about to make the second dumbest choice of my life. The first thing was to fix you up. This one is going to be worse. He spent the next hour taking things out of storage lockers he hadn't opened in months. His old military gear, which he had promised himself he would never use again. Demo charges, tripwires, smoke grenades, and proximity sensors. The Colonial Defense Force had taught him more than just how to shoot. They had shown him how to turn any place into a place to kill. Rent watched from the basement as he worked, pulling down tools and setting them up. You can't fight 6 Croft warriors, even with guns. You will die. Maybe, Jake said as he looked at a demo charge. Still good, not yet expired. But I won't make it easy for them. This is dumb. People are stubborn. Most likely. But here's the deal. Jake looked her in the eye. I fought your people for 15 years, doing what I'm told. Because a general said it was necessary, they killed. And guess what? I hated it. Each day. Every job. But I did it because I thought it would keep people safe at home. He held the data tool up. This right here? This is not the same. This is real evidence that could stop a war before it starts. Could save thousands of people. Croft and human. So, yes, I'm going to be stubborn about it. For a long time, Rent was quiet. Then her jaws clicked softly. Jake Porter, you are a strange person. Tell me more about it. He looked at his watch again. Maybe 3 hours or less. Okay, I need some information. How do people who hunt Croft work? What do they usually do? And Ren started to talk. Even though she was in pain and tired, she had been an officer in the military. She knew how to fight and how her people fought. She talked about standard formations, communication protocols, and approach patterns, which warriors would be in front, which would be on the side, and how they would work together. Jake listened and made plans. There were trees all around his cabin, and he had made natural clearings for the garden and solar panels. In some direction you can see well, but in others there's a lot of cover. There was only one way into the basement from above, but Renta's hole could have been another way in. Jake said, they'll think you're weak and hiding. They won't expect any pushback. Don't expect a person to be here at all. The surprise will only last a few seconds. Then you die. Then I should make the most of those times. Jake took a demo charge and went to the door. I'm going to set up the perimeter. You stay here and save your energy. And if things go wrong, if they get past me, you dig a hole and get that information to someone who can use it. Did you get it? Rent had a hard time sitting up again. This time she was able to do it, resting against the concrete wall. Jake Porter, why do this? Why put your life on the line for me? For my people? Jake stopped at the ladder and turned his back to her. Maybe if someone had done this 15 years ago, when people cared more about stopping wars and winning them, a lot of good people would still be alive. Both human and Croft. He turned around to look at her. And no child should have to lose their parents. Not kids who are people. Not yours either. He climbed up into the dark before dawn and got to work. There was a lot going on in the next 2 hours. Jake moved quickly and easily through the woods around his cabin, setting up traps and places to defend himself. Demo charges hidden under leaves along likely paths of approach. There were tripwires in the trees that set off flash grenades. Proximity sensors connected to his tablet gave him a tactical view of the area. He set up his solar panels with a manual override, so he could make an EMP burst if he needed to. There are scattered caltrops made of scrap metal all over the garden. Set up firing positions that have good cover and more than one way out. It wasn't a lot. It was almost funny how bad it was against 6 elite Croft warriors. But it was something. Jake had learned a long time ago that when your back was against the wall, anything was better than nothing. Jake climbed up on the roof of his cabin as the sun rose over the strange forest, turning the purple leaves orange and gold. His rifle was ready to go. All of his sensors were green on his tablet. And his heart was surprisingly calm. He had made his choice. Now, he just had to get through it. Just as the sun was starting to set, Jake's tablet's proximity alarm went off softly. He'd been watching the sensors for hours, his nerves on edge like a wire. Now, 6 red dots were on the screen, moving through the forest from the east. They were still 200 meters away and moving in a normal Croft formation. 2 scouts are in front, 3 are in the middle, and 1 is in the back as security. Jake set his comm link to the basement. He had set up a simple radio system so he could talk to Rent. Here they are. 6 contacts from the east, just like you said. Her voice crackled back. Still weak but strong. Scouts will look for traps. The main force waits until the way is clear. They are not in a hurry. Don't show your position too soon. Copy that. Jake took deep breaths to calm himself down. His hands weren't shaking. That was nice. The old training was coming back to me, like muscle memory from 100 fights. It was normal to be afraid. Panic would kill him. He saw the dots get closer and closer. The scouts moved slowly, looking around on the ground for the same kinds of traps that Jake had set. They were good. Professionally. One of them stopped at the edge of the trees and looked around Jake's cabin, looking for signs of trouble, anything that seems off. Jake had been careful. He used natural materials when he could, hid his demo charges under piles of leaves that were already there, and set up tripwires along paths that animals would naturally take. But these people weren't new to it. They would find something if they looked long enough. The scout moved forward again. Then one more. His foot landed right next to one of Jake's hidden charges. Just barely missed it. Jake's finger was close to the manual detonator. Not yet. Hold on. Let them go ahead. The second scout went with the first. They clicked and clattered to each other in their own language, their mandibles moving quickly as they talked. One pointed to the cabin. The other pointed to the forest to the north. They were going to flank by splitting up. Jake whispered into the comm. They're splitting up. 2 are going north. It looks like the others are staying put. Normal. Before the main advance. Scouts clear both sides. Yes, your garden is on the north side. Open ground. Yes, they will think that is a safe way to go. There is no cover for an ambush. But you put traps there, right? 3 demo charges and a group of tripwires. Jake saw the northern scout go into the garden area. The Croft was huge up close, even bigger than Rent. 8 feet of armor muscle that moved surprisingly quietly for something so big. The scout got to the first row of hydroponic planters. Stopped, looked at something while bent down. Jake's heart raced. Did he see the charges? The Croft stood up straight and waved to his partner. Everything is clear. Kept going. His foot hit the wire that tripped him. The flash grenade went off with a loud bang that echoed through the clearing. The scout staggered back, unable to see or think straight. Jake didn't wait. He pressed a button on his remote detonator. 3 demo charges went off one after the other, turning the garden into a storm of fire and shrapnel. The blast lit up the night sky. Jake didn't wait to see what happened. He was already moving, rolling to a different spot on the roof. The return fire came right away. Energy bolts sizzled through the air where he had just been, burning the metal roof panels. Contact! The north side is neutralized and taking fire from the trees. Jake yelled into the radio point for our left. They know you're here now. We'll no longer be careful. We'll push hard and fast. She was right. The rest of the Croft came out of the trees in a coordinated attack. They moved like liquid death, which was too fast for creatures their size. Jake shot controlled bursts from his pulse rifle, which made them take cover. He didn't want to hit them. He just wanted to slow them down and make them respect his fire. One of the Croft went left in an attempt to reach the east wall of the cabin. Jake followed him and shot. The bolt hit the warrior in the shoulder and spun him around. It wasn't a kill shot, but it bought time. The Croft dug behind Jake's water recycling unit. Jake slid down the roof access ladder into the cabin and said, East wall, 1 pin behind the recycler. It was now suicide to stay on the roof. They knew where he was. He went to the east-facing window that he had strengthened with extra metal panels. He could see the Croft warrior crouched behind the recycler, looking at his wound. The alien's armor had taken most of the blow, but he was being more careful now. Something moving in his peripheral vision. Jake turned and shot blindly through the window on the west side. The glass broke. A Croft warrior who had been trying to break through that side jerked back, shocked by the aggressive response. Jake said, They're probing all sides, looking for weak points. His tactical mind was working overtime. He couldn't protect every side at once. Eventually, they would find a way in. Jake Porter listened. Renta's voice said, sounding urgent, the head, tall, with red markings on the shoulder plates. Do you see him? Jake took a quick look through the window in the north. The biggest Croft warrior stood at the edge of the trees and clearly gave the others directions with hand signals. Even in the fading light, the red marks on his shoulders stood out. Yes, I see him. That is Kron, personal enforcer for the renewal. Very risky. He won't stop until he gets the information or proof that it has been destroyed. Rent stopped, and he will take pleasure in slowly killing you. Good. Thanks for that. Jake looked at his ammo counter. Still good, but he was using up charges faster than he wanted to. The attack came from 3 different directions at once. The injured soldier at the recycler ran to the door to kill himself. Another one came through the west window, breaking the frame and glass. The third one fell from above and broke through the skylight that Jake had put in for natural light. Jake's training took over. He shot the one coming through the window in the middle of the chest. The pulse bolt went through the armor and killed the warrior right away, turned to the person rushing to the door and hit him in the leg. The Croft fell but kept going, which was very brave of them. Jake shot again, this time hitting the joint in the neck where the armor was thinnest. The warrior fell, but the one that came through the skylight was on him, for arms reached out and their claws grew. Jake barely had time to raise his rifle to block. The Croft were too strong. He was pushed back, and his boots slid on the floor. The alien's mandibles clicked just inches from his face, and its breath was hot and smelled like chemicals. Jake let go of the rifle and let the Croft's momentum carry him forward. Then he pulled out his combat knife. They had taught him that move in close-quarters combat training, and it was mean. He pushed the blade up under the Croft's arm joint, where the armor plates met and left a space. The warrior screamed and let him go. Jake rolled over, took a flash grenade from his belt, and threw it. The grenade went off in the middle of them. Jake put 3 bolts into the chest of the stunned warrior in the chaos. The Croft fell apart. Be quiet. Jake's ears were ringing. There were 3 dead Croft warriors on the floor of his cabin. There was smoke in the air. He had 1. No, hold on. 3 down here. 1 in the yard. That was just 4 that rent. Jake yelled into the comm, 2 still out there. The leader and 1 more. Where the blast from below stopped him. Someone had broken into the basement. Jake ran to the ladder, but a huge figure got in his way. Kron is in charge. He was scary up close. Eyes cold and calculating, covered in scars from battle. Human, Kron said in perfect English. You fight well, but this is the end. Give me the traitor and the information, and I'll kill you quickly. I will take my time if you refuse. Jake lifted his gun. What do you think of option 3? Go away, and I'll let you live. Kron's laugh sounded like metal grinding. Brave words. Brave, but foolish. At the same time, they moved. Kron was quick, faster than anything that size should have been. He got too close for Jake to shoot, and one huge hand grabbed the rifle barrel, while the other slammed into Jake's chest. As he flew back into the wall, Jake felt his ribs break. His body was filled with pain. He couldn't get any air. Kron moved forward slowly, enjoying the moment. Jake's rifle was broken and no longer useful. There was a knife on the floor. He had no other choices. Kron grabbed Jake by the throat and lifted him off the ground with 1 arm. Die now, human. But you should know this. Your settlements will be destroyed. Your people will find out what it means to face the renewal, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. Jake's eyesight was getting worse. He couldn't breathe. This was it. He had failed. After that, the floor blew up. Ren came up through the basement, using her tunneling ability to get there from below. She hit Kron like a missile, her 4 arms outstretched and her talons scraping against his armor. The surprise attack made him let go of Jake, and both Croft warriors fell across the room. Jake fell to the ground, gasping for breath. He watched Rent and Kron go around each other with tears in his eyes. She was still hurt and weak, but her eyes were filled with a rage Jake had never seen before. Traitor, Kron growled. You turn on your own kind for this person. I don't betray anything. Rent shot back. You are the betrayer. You and the renewal. You took away the peace. You took my kids. You killed my friend. And you will pay for it. They fought with savage intensity. 4 arms against 4 and claws against claws. Kron was bigger, stronger, and not hurt. But Rent fought like a mother who had nothing to lose and everything to lose. They smashed through furniture, broke up the last of Jake's things, and ripped pieces out of the walls. Jake made himself move. His ribs hurt so much that they screamed, but he crawled across the floor looking for a weapon. He found the combat knife with his fingers. He held on to it and fought to get to his feet. Kron had Rent pinned down with two of his arms, and a third arm raised his claws to kill her. Jake didn't think at all. He just got up and left. He took 3 painful steps across the distance and stabbed Kron in the back of the knee, right where Rent had said the armor was weakest. Kron yelled and turned, hitting Jake with his backhand across the room. But the harm was already done. His leg gave way. Rent broke free, grabbed Kron's head with all 4 arms, and twisted with all her remaining strength. The noise was awful. Last, Kron's body fell to the ground and stayed there. Rent stood over him, breathing hard. A dozen new wounds were bleeding violet blood. Then her legs gave out, and she fell down. Jake crawled over to her. Even though his own body was barely working, I see the last one? Jake was able to gasp out. Yes, there are 6 in all, and they are all accounted for. Renta's eyes were getting glassy. She had gone far beyond what she could handle. The data must get to the right people. Jake said, "We will, both of us, together." The 2 sons of Kepler, 442F, finally went down below the horizon. The fight was over. They had somehow, against all odds, lived. Jake woke up to sunlight coming through the holes in the roof of his cabin. His whole body hurt. Every breath made his ribs feel like broken glass grinding against each other. Kron had grabbed him by the throat, which was bruised. His arms were covered in cuts and scrapes. But he was still alive, which was more than he had hoped for when the fight began. He slowly sat up, grimacing in pain. His cabin looked like a battle zone. The walls were burned and torn, and broken glass covered the floor. 5 Croft warriors were dead where they had fallen. The 6th one, the one from the garden, was probably still out there. The place he had built to escape violence had become exactly what he had been running from. A groan from the other side of the room brought back memories of being alone. Rent was leaning against the wall, and her breathing was shallow but steady. After killing Kron, she passed out, and Jake was too tired to move her. He had just fallen next to her and let himself fall asleep. "Still alive," she said, her mandibles clicking weakly. "Surprising." "Yes, please tell me about it." Jake stood up, gritting his teeth to keep the pain from getting worse. Somewhere in this mess was his first aid kit. He looked under a table that had fallen over and checked the supplies. Almost out. He had used most of it on Rent the day before, and the rest had been thrown around during the fight. He had to really help them. Soon. But first, they had to finish what they had started. Jake said, "The data device." "Where is it?" Rent pointed with her good arm toward the basement. "Safe. I put it away before Kron's 2nd warrior came down. He died when he looked for it." The tunnel fell on his body. Jake carefully climbed down the ladder, and his ribs hurt with every step. The basement was worse than the upstairs. The hole that Rent had made was now much bigger, and there was a Croft body half buried in rock and concrete that had fallen. He found the data device stuck behind a water container, just like Rent said it would be. The screen was cracked even more than before, but when he pressed the power button, it came on. There were a lot of files of data scrolling across the screen. Orders from the military, logs of communications, and target coordinates. Everything is written in both Croft and English. This was the proof that could end a war. He went back up and showed it to Rent. "How do we send this?" "You said that the renewal controls Croft communications. Not all of them. There are still loyalist troops. Military units that stuck with the Peace Council." Rent took the device with shaking hands. "I have codes for encrypted channels. You can get in touch with them directly, but they need a strong transmitter. Does your cabin have this?" Jake thought about his communication system. He had purposely kept it offline and broken the connection so that no one could reach him. But the gear was still there, in a box outside that would protect it from the weather. Military-grade hardware that can punch a signal through the atmosphere and reach orbital relays. "I have what we need, but I turned it off months ago. It will take some time to get it working." He looked at the time. 8 o'clock in the morning. By now, the closest human settlement would have seen something. The explosions were very loud. Someone would come to look into it eventually. How long will the transmission take? Just a few minutes. When connected, data is sent to a secure network. Then it goes to all the loyalist commanders and your human diplomatic channels at the same time. Rentha's eyes met his. This is the end of the renewal. Your army will get ready. My loyalists will go to free the hostages. Once the truth comes out, they can't hide. Jake gave a nod and went outside. The air in the morning was fresh and cool, which was strange given the destruction around him. He opened the box for the comm array. Everything seemed to be fine. He started hooking up cables, turning on systems, and aiming the directional antenna at the orbital relay he knew was above him. He worked for 40 minutes, and every time he moved, his ribs screamed. But in the end, the array came online. All green lights. He had a link. Rent had pulled herself to the door and was watching him work. Jake helped her outside and into a chair. Then he gave her the connected data device. Despite her injuries, her fingers move across the screen with practiced ease. Codes have been entered. Open channels. Upload started. How long? Jake asked. 0.3 minutes. Maybe 4. She didn't take her eyes off the screen. Jake Porter. Why did you help me? Truth now. Not nice things to say about kids or peace. Real reason. Jake was quiet for a moment as he watched the progress bar move across the screen. I fought your people for 15 years. A lot of Croft warriors died. I told myself it was necessary and that I was following orders to protect people. And maybe I was, but it never felt right to me. I kept thinking, there has to be a better way. Every time I fought or completed a mission, he pointed to the cabin that had been destroyed. So I ran. Came out here to find peace by not dealing with the problem at all. But you crashing through my floor taught me something. Running doesn't make things better. That just means you're not there when the fighting starts. You have to work to make real peace, the kind that really matters. Sometimes with words and agreements. Sometimes by standing up when someone is trying to destroy it all. Rentha's jaws made a soft clicking sound. You are a strange person, but a good one. Your name will be known by my kids. We'll know that a soldier saved their mother, ended a war, and gave us a chance at real peace. The data device made a sound. Upload finished. Relay satellites were already sending the information to military networks on both sides from somewhere in orbit. People in government offices and military headquarters on many worlds were reading proof of the renewal's plot. The wheels were turning. It's over, Ren said. She slumped back in the chair, tired but with a look of peace on her face. My kids will be safe now. Loyalists will move in a few hours. Your diplomats will check and set up defenses. The renewal can't win once this is known. Jake felt something loosen in his chest. They had really done it. 2 broken warriors in a ruined cabin had ended a war. He asked, what happens now? For you, I mean, if I live through my injuries, I will join the loyalist forces again, help find renewal cells, put back together what was broken. She stared at him. And you? Back to being alone? Jake stared at his cabin, or what was left of it, the place he made to get away from the world. It would take months to fix, if it was even worth fixing. It was possible for him to do it, could start over, go back to his books, gardens, and being alone. But he realized something while he was standing there. He had felt empty in the peace he had found by himself. It was as if he was hiding instead of healing. For the past few hours, fighting with Ren to protect something that really mattered had felt different. True, like he was finally doing something that fit with who he wanted to be instead of who he was trying to get away from. No, he finally said. No more being alone. You were right before. Someone should have done this 15 years ago. Someone should have cared enough to stop wars before they started and build bridges instead of walls. He turned on the emergency beacon on his comm array. It would make people in charge of the world run. Medical teams, officers who are debriefing, and probably a lot of other people with a lot of questions. That was okay, though. He knew the answers now. He said into the transmitter, "This is Jake Porter, former captain of the Colonial Defense Force. I'm at the coordinate 774 by 321 on Kepler 442F. I have a Croft officer who is hurt and needs medical help right away. She has information that is very important to both of our governments. I also want diplomatic channels to be open. We know that a group of Croth rebels is planning to attack human settlements. This is not a practice. This is not a drill. I say again, the answer came in a matter of seconds. A lot of people talking at once, asking for clarification and asking questions. Jake answered them in a calm and professional way. He had been out of the service for months, but it was easy for him to get back into the old rhythms. Renth liked what he saw. Are you going back to the military? Maybe, or maybe something else. But not hiding anymore, that's for sure. Jake looked at the painting of the sunrise that turned the alien sky orange and purple. Running away doesn't bring you peace. You build it one choice at a time, even when it's tough, especially when it's hard. Your people are lucky to have you. I also think our people are lucky to have people like you. Croth is ready to lose everything for what is right. Even though his ribs hurt, Jake smiled. Maybe that's how peace really works. Not treaties signed by governments, but people choosing to put understanding ahead of old grudges. In the distance, you could hear the rumble of airplane engines. Quick movers, probably the military. In a matter of minutes, medical teams, security forces, and the whole government response would be here. Jake's peaceful life was over for good. But when he saw Renth close her eyes in relief, knowing that her kids would be safe and that the war had been stopped, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Not the empty kind that came from doing what you were told, but the real kind that came from making a choice that mattered. An hour later, 3 Colonial Defense Force planes landed in the clearing. Medics rushed out, and armed soldiers kept watch around the area. Jake told them what they needed to know, then watched them carefully stabilize Renth and get her ready for transport. A young lieutenant came up to him and saluted sharply. "Sir, Colonel Hayes wants to talk to you right away. She says to tell you that your country needs you. What you did today has opened doors we thought were closed for good." Jake took one last look at the ruined cabin. He had come here to find peace. He had found war instead. But by fighting that war and standing up when it mattered, he found something better than being alone. He had a reason to live. Jake said, "Tell the colonel I'm listening, and let her know that I'm ready to serve again. But this time on my terms. Not just fighting wars, but building peace." The lieutenant smiled. "Sir, I think she'll like hearing that." He watched the forest fade away below as the plane took off, taking Renth to safety and Jake back to a world he thought he had left behind. Because he made a choice. Croft children would be reunited with their mother somewhere in the galaxy. Because he stood his ground, thousands of people would live. You couldn't find peace alone. People who were willing to stand up when everyone else told them to walk away built it. Jake Porter was done walking away.